everyone, it's Ryan Metzler here again, and today, instead of a review, we're going to have a top 10 list. This is a series that I know Tom wants to do more of, and something that I'm going to try and do more of, hopefully as the coming months pass. I can try and get one or so a month out, different top 10 lists, be it top, Euro games or top train games, top two-player games, top dexterity games, whatever it might be. Today's list is going to be the top two-player games that can also be played by more or less players. Now, some of these will be primarily two-player games that can indeed play more, and some of them will be games that are usually played more, but are especially good with two. So real quick, we're going to go over the whole top 10. I'll give you a little bit about what I like about all of them, and then you can decide for yourself whether these are titles that are going to be interesting to you. All right, game number 10 is one that just was re-released recently. It's an old game, and it's called Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. Now, not primarily a two-player game. It's actually kind of a solo game if you really sit down and think about it. In the game, you are taking the part of one of the members of Sherlock's group of friends. You are an investigator who is trying to solve a mystery that Sherlock poses to you. Now, I think this works especially well as a two-player game because you can kind of work with someone else, or technically against someone else, to try and solve the crime. You're given details about the crime, and you're allowed to use different references that are inside of this box. There's a whole book or series of books of clues that you can follow. And I think having someone else to bounce ideas off of, to really work with, in order to try and figure out what leads to follow, what those leads might mean, what the motive behind a crime is, and why or how the crime was committed is very interesting. Now, you can play it with more. And you're kind of competing in that instance, or using those people to bounce ideas off of as well. And you can play it by yourself, but I just don't think that holds the same experience. So having a good person to play with, to experience the game with, to really be able to try and deduce what Sherlock has figured out in a better or faster manner than he has, is really kind of interesting. So a game that plays great with two, Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, but can also play more, game number 10. The second game, or game number 9, I guess in this case, on my list is going to be a game that was released a few years ago and plays anywhere from 2 to 6 players. Now, this is a war game / Euro game mix called Dominant Species, designed by Chad Jensen and released by GMT Games. It's seen several printings now since its original 2010 release, but as I said, it plays anywhere up to 6. And it's got a lot going on. It's a very deep or thinky strategy game where you're placing workers in order to place out different species from your grouping of animals. So one person may be mammals, and one person may be reptiles, amphibians, birds, so forth and so on, all competing for domination of the globe as an ice age comes on and sets upon the globe. Now, in the two-player game, each player plays 3 animals. So instead of just having one type of animal being, mammals, you're going to be birds and mammals and amphibians or something like that. And you're vying for different areas on the board, just like you would in a more player game or in a higher player number game. But instead of scoring all of your animals, you're really only going to be scoring the animal that has the lowest score that you control. So you're trying to kind of evenly score with all of your own individual animals, but there are times when you can use use your own species, your own animals, in order to have a clever play by, lowering the score of one of your animals to further one of your other animals in order to do better. So there's a lot of trying to use your own resources, even though they're technically competing animal groupings, in order to score more points. I think it plays very well at 2 players, definitely plays well with more players as well, but a game from GMT, heavy Euro game, that plays well with 2, Dominant Species. Game number 8 on my list of best 2-player and up games is Brass. Now, you're going to say, Brass technically doesn't support 2 players. It doesn't. It's a 3 to 4 player game, and it's kind of an industry game that kind of uses trains as a little bit of a theme. Now, it's canals and trains, and you're trying to basically build a network in order to supply goods to different areas that use goods, and by supplying and using these goods, you'll flip over different industries in order to score points. Now, there is a special 2-player board for this. It's not an official variant, but I like it so much that I'm including it on this list, that you can have printed out and mounted on board. You can see this is just a printed and mounted board, but it basically takes the game and adapts it for 2 players. It makes the map a little bit tighter, and it changes a few rules, but it puts it out there so that you can play the game 2 players, and it's not going to be a mess. There are several other rules changes, but Brass is one of my favorite games. I think it's a very tight and a very demanding Martin Wallace game. Not quite as sensical as maybe Age of Industry, but I prefer the original. So if you're looking for a good Wallace experience, one that's very demanding, one that's not very forgiving, and that you can play 2 players without having to play a specific 2-player game like A Few Acres of Snow, check out the 2-player variant of Brass. I'm sure you can find information about it on Board Game Geek. Game number 7 on this list is Trajan. Now the game plays 2 to 4, and nothing changes really between that 2-point and the 4-point, except for that the game scales so that you keep the same sense of urgency. As you move pieces around your little Mancala board, for each piece you move, you go 1 space forward on a timer track, essentially. And with fewer players, that timer track is smaller. So you have less time overall between actions to do things, but you really get the same amount of actions because of the shortened timer and the fewer number of players. So basically, it scales appropriately. It keeps everything tight. You still have the same access to the same options, but you're going to have an appropriate amount of time to do them. The game is great overall. You're trying to manage several different little micro areas of play, be it taking cards and doing set collection, or kind of conquest over an area of the land, or building separate things. And it gives you all of those options in the appropriate amount of time. Scales very well. That is Trajan by Stefan Feld. Game number 6 on this list is going to be one that was very popular at Gen Con this year. It plays 2 to 4, but is really best at 2. And that game is Seasons. Now, Seasons is a card game with some dice drafting, some card drafting, and then card play, which is going to be reminiscent of the CCG genre of games. You're going to be using resources to play cards out. You're going to be getting those resources by drafting dice. Now, the key here is that there is a card draft before you start the game, and each player starts with a certain number of cards and will draft around the table. With 2 players, you get to see a lot more strategy in this draft. You're going to see your cards, you'll draft 1, but then at that point you get to see all of what your opponent has, and plan accordingly based on what you had in your hand and what's going to potentially be coming back to you to get a combination of cards that's going to be best. So there's a lot of strategic options in that draft. From that point on, you can best plan out how you're going to play out the rest of the game, and I think that makes Seasons a lot more interesting at the lower player numbers. It's still a good game at higher player numbers, not a great game, but at 2 players, Seasons is really a great experience and one that I suggest everyone try. Now we're in the top 5, and number 5 is going to be Race for the Galaxy, a little bit older card game, one that has a ton of expansions now, and the official player number is anywhere from 2 to 4, and I think with the expansions you go up even higher than that, maybe up to 5. Now, the game itself is very well done. Everybody's blind choosing, or blind from everyone else. They're going to choose one action and play it down face down on the table and then reveal them. And the actions that happen are only the actions that are revealed. So in several different rounds or over the course of the game, you'll have different rounds where some actions are not taken and thus don't resolve. And the whole strategy is trying to plan what actions you want to happen so that they best benefit you but don't benefit anyone else, or at least minimally benefit everyone else. In the 2-player variant of this game, especially the advanced variant, everybody who's playing, each player, drafts 2 cards instead of 1. So you're going to choose 2 actions that resolve. And so then you can plan a little bit better to do the actions that you need to do, maybe worrying a little bit less about what your opponent's doing because you don't need them to specifically choose the actions that you want in order to accomplish your goal. So I think it allows you a little bit more strategy based on your own hand, with the added benefit of whatever your opponent chooses on their turn, while still trying to figure out what they don't need or what they don't want to happen, so that you can be the only person to benefit from it. So that is Race for the Galaxy. I have a video on it if you want to check it out, but I think it has a really great advanced variant for 2-player play. number 4 is a game that people are probably going to disagree with me on. I actually know that there's some controversy over this, but I enjoy the game 2 players, so I chose it to go on this list, and I don't care what anybody else thinks, really. But the game is Agricola. I mean, it's a very popular game. It held the number 1 position on Board Game Geek for a long time, and the game scales anywhere from 1 to 5. I actually think it's probably better around the 3 or 4 player range, but as a 2-player game, I think it's very enjoyable. Now, the debate is that there's maybe not enough clay in the game to make it enjoyable for people with 2 players. And the cards do change with the more players you have or the fewer players you have, and more clay may come out. But I think that the direct competition between 2 players, the fact that all of the roles are still available, but you're competing directly with one person, and you can basically take a move just out of spite to prevent them from doing something, makes the interactions in a 2-player game specifically very interesting. I really don't have much more to say about it than that. I enjoy it 2-player. I think that other players should look at it 2-player, that they may find it enjoyable, and it's also going to offer an experience. If you don't have 2 players, if you have more, or if you just want to play by yourself, you can still pull out Agricola and have a good time. Alright, game number 3 is going to be another Stefan Feld title that's higher up on this list than Trajan because I think it does accomplish 2-player better than Trajan does. And that is The Castles of Burgundy, another 2 to 4 player game by Stefan Feld, this time by Alia and Ravensburger, but a game that is very good at the 2-player option. I think the whole thing here is that the strategy is a little bit easier to manage in a 2-player game because there are fewer turns passing in between each of your own turns. And I think that's a very common theme that you're going to see here in all of the games, is that strategically they're much better or much more strategic at a lower player number due to the fact that you can continue to plan for your future turns and not that much changes in between. Now, this game relies heavily on die rolling, but there are ways to modify or to mitigate the luck of the dice. And so you're using these dice to take and place tiles in order to try and place tiles better than your opponents. Now with the changing landscape of the tile board, tiles will be removed faster with more players. And so with 2 players, you can look at what's out there, try and plan a little bit better about what you'd like to take in future turns, and maybe your opponent will see what you're doing and they'll stop you from doing it, but maybe they won't. And that planning will really be better for you in the long run. So I would check out The Castles of Burgundy, definitely if you're looking for a great Euro game, anywhere from 2 to 4, especially at 2. Castles of Burgundy by Stefan Feld, Alia and Ravensburger. Alright, game number 2 is going to be a cooperative game. It's a card game and one that I've reviewed, and it is Lord of the Rings, the card game, or the LCG by Fantasy Flight Games. Now the box itself is playable with 1 or 2 players, and if you buy multiple sets or several expansions, you can even scale this up to 3, 4, 5, 6, however you want to do it. The adventure will scale with you and become more and more difficult. I primarily play it with 2 players, which is why I can tell you that it's a great 2-player game. Probably one of the best cooperative games out there, and one I would suggest for anyone who has a regular gaming partner who would like to follow the missions of the game, buy all of the expansions and continue on with the storyline, see the progression of the difficulty, and really get into the game itself. It does have a strong deck building aspect, and building 2 decks that interface nicely with each other, that cover either different aspects of each type of quest or cover, more strongly certain aspects, really makes the game interesting. So if you're looking for a great game to play with a partner that can even scale up with more players if you really have the opportunity, check out Lord of the Rings, the card game by Fantasy Flight Games. And my favorite 2-player plus game of all time, and probably will never be changed, is Crokinole. You can see I have my board sitting here next to me. We found this game several years ago at a convention. It's primarily a 2-player game in that you're sitting across from another player, flicking little discs into this hole and trying to best outplay your opponent using your dexterity. The game is very simple. I mean, you're simply flicking that little disc and trying to hit the center hole, and if you don't hit the center hole, trying to get your disc best positioned on the board. It's addictive. It really is. We went to a convention. We immediately had to have a board once we played it. We got a board shortly after that, and then another board, and then another board, and then another board. And so we've been through probably 4 or 5 different boards at this point. We have antique boards. We have very nice boards. We have some middle-range boards. But it's always a game we can get to the table. It's always good with 2. It's good with 3, even though you have to kind of make your own lines. And it's great with 4 as well. Probably one of the best games I've ever played overall. Certainly a very good, or if not great, 2-player game. And one you can take out in pretty much any scenario with any type of gamer. That's it for this top 10 list of the best 2+ player games. There are ones in my collection that I enjoy the most, 2-player, and like to take out with even more players. And hopefully you can find time to play them with your significant other, a friend, your gaming group, or anyone else who likes to play games.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find the latest board game news at Dicetowernews.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Fun Again Games, the world's best game source. Fun Again Games has over 5,000 games available. Check them out at funagain.com.